Good afternoon. We have quite a few people registered for this webinar. We're going to give it some time to let everybody get joined. So give me just a few minutes. We'll get started in just a few minutes once we get quite a few registrations approved and admitted in. About one more minute, starting to slow down just a bit. All right, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on the webinar for April 28th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. On behalf of Commissioner Sid Miller and the Texas Agriculture Finance Authority, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to join us to learn a little bit more about the Agriculture Production Resource Opportunities Grant, also known as AgPro. Just a few housekeeping reminders, maybe. Due to the high number of participants, all of the microphones are disabled, and we will take question and answers in the either in the chat or in the Q&A section. There is staff available to answer those questions, and any questions that we don't get to right away, we are also combining into a frequently asked questions document. We are adding to the document that was also that we have started from the previous webinar, and we'll have it posted hopefully by the end of the week for a combined FAQ document to answer all questions as possible. We will have folks probably joining us throughout the meeting, so I'll try to repeat that as often as I can. The slides will be available and posted online, as well as a copy of this webinar as well. So with that, we will jump into the purpose. So the AgPro grant, the primary goal is to support agriculture producers, those folks that grow and raise, or who create or expand agriculture operations in Texas. Why this program matters: it helps producers improve agricultural operations and support local businesses. The program goals: maintain agricultural production, help producers grow more or produce more efficiently, increase agricultural production capacity, improve efficiency through upgraded equipment and technology, and enable producers to scale operations to meet market demand. Some general information about the program. The website itself has all of the information you could possibly need to know about this program. On the website, there is a document called the Request for Grant Application. Please make sure that you have read that entire document, as there is specific information in there about how to access the system, specific terms and conditions, and instructions on how to apply. You should be proposing a budget to focus on the producer or production area of your operation. This is not for service providers. This is also a competitive grant process. As of this morning, there was almost 700 applications started in the system. The max award is $500,000. Some terms to know. TAFA is also the Texas Agricultural Finance Authority. This is a board of directors who oversees the grant program and who will make the funding determinations, meaning they will be the ones to select the grant recipients. A grant recipient or grantee is an individual, organization, or a business entity that receives grant funds. A grant funder or a grantor is a government entity in this case that will actually provide the grant funds. TDA acts on behalf of the TAFA program. We're the administrative arm. TDA GO is our online portal to access and submit applications. It is also where payments are processed and performance reports are submitted if you are selected for a grant. And again, on the previous slide, I mentioned that there was the request for grant application. This is the official announcement from TDA TAFA and has all of the instructions on how to apply. Most of the time, if you're calling here to TDA, we will ask if you have reviewed that document, and we will be able to answer certain questions for clarification purposes. One of the most important things related to AgPro, as majority of the folks interested in this program have not necessarily been through a grant process, we want to make sure you understand a little bit more about the grant life cycle. We have already gone through the program development and drafted the request for grant application. We are currently in the call for solicitation and application release phase, and we're working at doing application intake and submission. So this is where you guys are at in the process. You are logging into our system and submitting an application for us to evaluate. Once the grant application period closes on May 14th, we will move into the administrative review and scoring process. Once we work through that administrative reviewing scoring process, funding determinations will be made, and those that are selected enter into a grant agreement. This acts as a contract outlining all of the requirements to receive a grant. From there, we move into post-award and monitoring. This is where you're actually going to complete your project, submit payment request, and when you're done, we will go into closeout. Eligibility requirements. To qualify for AgPro, you must be a producer of a raw agriculture commodity, meaning you raise or grow something. You're not the service provider. It also means that if you are just a landowner who leases your land for someone else to conduct an agricultural operation on your land, you are not eligible. It is the actual producer who is taking the act of growing cattle, raising a crop, growing livestock. The actual person taking that act of doing something to raise or grow a crop is eligible. You must be directly, and that means be directly engaged in creating or expanding agricultural production business. You must be located and headquartered in Texas. And the principal owners of the business must all be U.S. citizens or resident aliens. TDA and TAFA reserve the right to request additional information to determine eligibility from the applicant as we move forward in the administrative review process for applications that are submitted. Ineligible applicants, processors or manufacturers that significantly transform the raw material into a value-added product. So the best analogies that I can provide here are when you take your goat dairy milk and turn it into cheese. The act of turning it into cheese is not the production focus. It would be to raise those goats for their milk. The other component of it would be for wine grapes, turning it into wine. The act of turning it into wine would not be eligible, but the growing of the grapes would be. General ag service providers, if you are a custom farmer and you're not custom farming for your own purposes, you're doing it for someone else, that acts as a service. That would be an example. Brokers, buyers, traders, universities, and food banks. In addition, if an applicant has a family, job, business link to an executive officer or employee of TDA or a member of the TAFA board, they cannot apply for the AgPro grant. And all of this information is outlined in the request for grant application, the official solicitation document. Funding requirements. The TAFA board will make the final funding decisions. The board has the right to provide full or partial funding for any grant application, and all award decisions are final. Grant awards will range from $5,000 to $500,000 for each recipient under the program. Funding is on a cost reimbursement basis. So what does this mean? It means TDA does not make direct cash payments to grant recipients. And why do we do this? It helps ensure accountability for public funds. So this means that you'll have to actually spend the money and then seek reimbursement for your particular item in your project that's approved. It also helps us confirm that money is only used for approved purposes, and it reduces the risk of fraud, waste, or misuse. TDA will work with grant recipients on cash flow needs as applicable. The estimated project timeline is about 21 months from start to finish. However long it takes you to purchase those items, reimbursement, cash flow, we will work with you. The grant also requires a cost share or match. Match means the applicant also invests their own money into the project. The matching requirements, based on the range of funds between $5,000 and $100,000 is a $10,000 match. The next range, all the way up to $250,000, is a 20% match. And then up to $500,000 is a 30% match. Here in a minute, I'll show you a table kind of what this looks like. What is the purpose of matching funds? The purpose of matching funds shows the applicant is serious and committed and is not just relying on state funds. And applicants are more thoughtful and realistic when you have to invest your own money into the process. So some examples of match distribution. If you want $100,000 from the grant, you would be putting together a total project cost of $110,000 to meet the matching requirement of 10%. To receive $250,000 at a 20% match requirement, you would be putting together a $300,000 project. And then for $500,000 at the 30% requirement, you would be putting together a $650,000 project cost. If you have not been in the application, you will, and we'll get to that screen later, you will see that the budget page will ask you to input your total cost, and it will do the math for you based on those total project costs that you've asked for. Match ensures that we're investing with producers and not just in them. So we are partners. Some eligible expenses. When it comes to grants, we like to bucket things into specific cost categories: personnel, equipment, supplies, contracts, and other direct expenses. In this particular screen, we have a few examples. When it comes to equipment, we're looking at specialty purpose equipment, capital expenditures, or other capital assets. There is a more in-depth definition of this in the request for grant application document. Supplies are those non-capitalized equipments, some of those everyday needs that you have for your operation. Contracts could be for contract labor or any specific construction expenses you might have. And then other direct expenses like livestock, seed, fertilizer, some of those other larger expenses that you experience in your operation that don't fit in any of the other categories. On the website, we've got a pretty in-depth resource. It's called the AgPro Allowable Expense Guide. This is not an all-encompassing list, but this was to give you a pretty good start of some things to think about as you design your program, your project of what you're intending to apply for. As far as ineligible expenses, in grants management, there is standard ineligible expenses, alcoholic beverages, contributions, charity, or political, controlled assets. These are things like laptops and TVs, depreciation, entertainment, costs that are before the grant term agreement date. This means that if you're purchasing an item today, if you go out and buy a hay baler today, it would not be eligible for reimbursement in the grant term because you bought it before the grant was started and you have received official award notice. Expenses not listed in the application or do not meet the intent of the grant program. Gift cards or gift certificates. Indirect expenses. The purchasing of land. It is rare for any grant program out there to purchase land. We can help you with some of your lease payments throughout the term of the grant, but the grant itself cannot purchase land. Payment of dividends, bonuses, or owner draws. Refinancing costs associated with previous debt, tips and gratuity. Any travel, including lodging, meals, mileage, or transportation, or expenses that would have been eligible if documented correctly. So this means that if you are successful at receiving a grant and you turn in a payment request for an item that was not included in your budget or didn't have enough documentation, it means that it could be potentially considered ineligible and not receive reimbursement for. So with that, we always just ask that you stay in line with what you have asked for or stay in communication with your grant specialist if you are awarded funds. More of that detail will come out as for those that receive grant funds, we will have more information. Some important dates. Again, these are dates based on our best estimate of how things will progress. The application period opened on April 1st. The due date is April 14th, 5 p.m. Please, please, please do not wait until 4:55 p.m. Try to get it in sooner. We've seen instances where the internet slows down at whatnot. Just please don't wait until 4:55 p.m., 4:59 p.m. Get it in early. When we designed this program, we anticipated that the notice of awards would go out in July and projects start in August. Again, please note that those are anticipated dates. And if something changes in those, once the application period closes, we will notify everybody of changes in anticipated notice of award and start dates. How to apply. So as I mentioned in the beginning, TDA GO is the agency online grant management system. You will need to set up an account. We'll talk about the required sections. We'll talk about the upload requirements, the certification, and submission steps. Again, do not wait until the last minute. Some key reminders: set up your TDA GO account at minimum 5 days before the grant deadline. As you can tell, this is a very popular program. We get about 80 registrations a day. Staff is trying their best to keep up with them, but please allow 48 to 72 hours for approval, especially for those that are registering over weekend hours. TDA GO itself, once you're in the system, times out after 30 minutes. Make sure you save your work as you go. If you want to, you can, and I'll show you how in a few screens, print the PDF version and have drafts of your writing, and you can copy and paste it over all at one time. Some other reminders. Review all of your sections before you certify and submit. because once you submit, you cannot edit or make any changes. Applications must be submitted before the deadline. The system itself will automatically log out at the time listed Central Standard Time and will not accept late applications. So if you're hovering around that submit button at 4:59, 5 p.m., just know that the system automatically is going to log out and it may disappear. And then regularly check your emails, whether that's your inbox or your check your junk mail for emails from the TDA GO account. New users for TDA GO, and I realize that we have everybody on this call and bearing some have already accessed the system, some are still waiting to register. So to access the system, this is what the web page looks like. If you type in Texas Agriculture Grant login, you may not get to our system and you may be trying to log into the back side of the TDA webpage interface. Please make sure that this is the actual screen that you are seeing when you are trying to register for your TDA GO account. The difference is this one's blue, the other one is green. To log in for the first time, if you do not have an account, you will click New User Organization Registration. It can be easy enough to just click on this and rock and roll. Please refer back to our website and pull up the request for grant application. There are specific instructions for how to fill out this new user registration. As I mentioned, TDA GO is a universal system across this agency. It manages grants from everything from cities, counties, universities, nonprofits, and individuals. And each program has a specific way of completing this registration form. Everything on this screen, as well as in the request for grant application document, the red asterisks are the required fields. Majority of the time, the number one question that we get is related to the SAM UEI number. So this here in blue, the instructions indicate if you do not have a SAM UEI number, you should enter in 12 zeros. The FEIN number is not a required field and you can leave it blank. Once you complete the new user registration, one thing I want to mention, please, for your username, we highly recommend using your email address. It's easier to recover that if you get locked out or need to update your password. So once you complete that registration, you will receive an email that will notify you that we have received your request and that we will approve it in 48 to 72 hours. Once TDA receives it, you will also receive an additional email letting you know that your account has been approved. So you should receive 2 separate emails. You cannot log into the system until it has been approved. How to access grant applications once you have received your approval to access TDA GO. Once you log in, you will see a dashboard. On the left-hand side is something called My Tasks. This is the section that you navigate to once you have started your application and you've logged out and logged back in. You will find it under My Task. The Initiate New Application is where you navigate to start the application for the very first time. And an announcement section will be if TDA has any specific announcements that need to be made about any programs in the system will appear here. So once you're ready to start your application, you'll hover over the Initiate New Application and you will scroll until you find the Grant Agriculture Producer Resource Opportunities. It's important to note the full name. It's not listed as AgPro here, but this is what you will click on to start your application. Once you click on this link, you will get a brief description page asking you to agree that this is the grant opportunity you are going to apply for. From here, you'll be navigated to a new landing page. This is what your grant application will look like from the very start. On the left-hand side, there are 4 gray areas These are different functions of the grant process. There's forms, status options, tools, and other related documents. When you expand those sections under forms, this is where every single form related to the grant application for AgPro are located. You will complete each one of these sections, answering all of the questions on each of its pages to fully respond to a grant application submission. This is one of the other most important things. Status options. Once you complete your grant application and you e-sign it, the final step is clicking Submit Application. If you e-sign it and you do not click Submit Application, your application will not be considered for approval. So make sure that you remember this key step. The Tools section is a place to see the status history of your grant application. This is where you can verify whether it's still in process. In process means it's in your work list to complete, submitted, or other stages that the grant application has taken. If you need to print the application, you can use this print document feature, the second one from the bottom of this list, and it will give you a ADA compliant PDF document for you to see the whole entire application and start preparing your information before you put it into the online system. The next section, related documents, is not needed for the application phase. You can ignore it. The first page in the application is the applicant contact information. Please, you will click on applicant contact information, and then it will bring up all of the information, and you will select the box. This is based on your user registration. So if Mary Smith registered for the farm, her name will be entered as an option to pick as an authorized official. For the name of the application preparer, if you have more than one person that has an account for your farm, ranch, or business, they can also be listed as an application preparer, or you can put your name there as well. Both of these are required fields and they're automated. You would just click the drop down area to select. There's also an opportunity to enter the name of an additional contact. If they do not have an account, but you want to make sure that we have an additional contact for you, you can input that in this section as well. Finally, at the bottom of this page, you will indicate which county you're located in. And then we often receive quite a bit of interest from legislators asking who has applied or received a grant in their area. So please utilize this to help us pull that information for those. If you do not know which district you are located in, right there in the middle of the page, you can click the Here link, and it will allow you to enter your address, and it will pre-populate on a new web page who your district House representatives is, Senate, and Congress, and then you can enter that information in TDA GO. Key here, make sure you hit the save button. Just a reminder, TDA GO times out after 30 minutes, so hit save as often as you can. Application form. The application form, you will click on that blue bar, application form, and you will answer the questions as you go. Anything that has a red asterisk is a required field. If for some reason you do not have any of these numbers, if you do not have a TDA GO account number or a Texas Department of Agriculture account number, you can put NA, or a TCEQ permit number, you can put NA. If something does not apply to you and it's a required field, NA is the option to put. And then as you work through that page, hit save often. The next is operation information, very similar. As you work through this page, enter in as all of the information that is applicable to you and hit save. There's getting there, project proposal. Again, just answer the questions as you go. This is where you're going to be actually able to enter in key information about what it is that you're wanting to utilize these funds for in narrative format. And then hit save often throughout this. Just because there's a lot of fields that require writing, maybe clicking off the screen and coming back, please make sure you're hitting save often. Work plan. This is kind of another section that this is your ability to kind of give us a timeline of when each activity will occur. You know, if you're asking for seed, when will you plant that seed? When will you harvest the seed? There's a plus button on the right-hand side that will allow you to add multiple rows. And then hit save throughout. Estimated revenue and operation budget. There's specific instructions on each of these sections. So you'll be entering in your next, your estimated 12-month revenue and operation budget for the next 12 months. TDA and TAFA understand that the 12-month cycle looks different for everybody. It could be calendar year, it could be fiscal year, it could be crop year. Just do the best that you can to show a 12-month estimation. In this section, you will also have the ability to upload how you plan to, what source of funding you have for your match. If there is something here that has a browse button, when you click on it, you'll get a screen that pops up and you will select which document you want. You will click open and it will upload here into this section. The key thing, you have to hit save on that page, otherwise the document will not complete its upload process. The next step is your project budget cost. This is where you will actually enter in the specific things that you are requesting TAFA and TDA to consider for the grant funds, how you will plan, what particular cost items that you will be asking for. As I mentioned earlier, this table is automatically going to calculate your match percentage for you. So when you get down below this table, you will enter in your total requested amount for each item that you're seeking grant funding for. So if this was $110,000 here for one particular tractor, whenever I hit save, it'll roll up here, $110,000, $100,000 will show up in grant funds, and the $10,000 will show up in the match. Just like the work plan, this section also has plus buttons to allow you to enter in multiple line items. And then this page, please hit save often, just so you don't time out from and lose all your work. Administrative form uploads. These 3 forms on this page are required. To access them, you will click on the blue link. You will download them, fill them out, and either scan them or figure out how to save them back into your computer and re-upload them and save them to move the application forward. For the direct deposit form, please do not put any other form from your bank. Only this form should be used. And then key thing, just make sure you hit save so that the upload process will be successful. After you've completed everything, go back and review all of the 8 previous sections to make sure they're complete. If they're complete with no issues, you'll see check boxes. If a page has an error, you'll see an exclamation point, and you'll need to navigate back to that page to clear any errors. Also, when you're working in those particular documents, if you hit save, often enough, you'll see all of the error checks come up, and then you'll know how you'll be able to clear them one by one. Certification. This is important. This is your act of e-signing your application. You will check this box, and once you check the box, you will hit the save button at the very top. Once you hit save, it will automatically input your name, title, and date. But that's not the final step. If you are done filling out your application and there are no errors that you've seen, navigate and hit submit application. If you do not hit this after you've saved that signature, your application will not be submitted. If you hit submit and you get a document validation error, this means that there is an error somewhere on the page that didn't get cleared, and you have an opportunity to go back and fix it. You can click on this blue link, or you can navigate back by clicking on those tabs on the side. But once you clear that error, make sure you go back and hit submit. After you've submitted your application, you should receive a confirmation email that your application has been submitted. One important thing to note that we've watched over the last few months on other programs. Sometimes when you hit submit and you're letting it turn, but you think nothing's happening and you hit it again, it unsubmits your application and you don't realize it. So you will end up getting an email, but it is incumbent upon you to make sure that you know what step your application is. So how can you confirm that your application is submitted? One, it will no longer be in your work list, or you can click search applications and you can see the status that your application is in. As long as it says it's submitted, you know we have it. If it's in process, you need to make sure you go back in and click the submit button. Some general grant writing tips. Start early and do not wait until the last minute. Read through all the directions and follow them closely as possible. The staff is here to answer questions, but we really want to make sure you've read all of those directions that we've published online, and they can answer clarifying questions along the way. Make sure you have a plan and that it's realistic with a realistic time frame. If you want, you can draft your answers first in Word, Google Doc, or on paper, and then check your application to ensure that all required materials are attached. Proofread it for context and spelling errors, and communicate with the grant specialist when possible. So what happens after you submit your application? TDA will go through an administrative review. We will complete our evaluation. The TAFA board will meet for consideration, and applicants are notified of their decisions, whether they're funded or not funded. And then if they're funded, they move to grant agreement and project start and post-award management. I think it's important to note, for those of you that are applying, what does post-award look like? Because it's not just as simple as going and buying a tractor and you're done. Just some reminders, all of your costs must be within the grant term. So if you went and bought something today, it may not be eligible for the grant because it was not purchased within the grant term. TDA utilizes Texas Grant Management Standards. This is a set of policies and rules that the state of Texas operates under for grant management, and that funds can only be used on your approved project. So what happens once you're awarded? You can submit payment requests every quarter, but knowing ag production, you can do them monthly. And then you will submit all of your payment requests as we move towards closeout within 60 days after the term of the grant agreement ends. Some examples of proper payment requests include invoices and receipts, detailed information on personnel costs, and proof of payment. For those of you that were just joining us, when we talk about cost reimbursement, this is TDA's way to protect state funds and ensure that all activities are allowable and not and to safeguard funds. Just some idea, just so you're aware of what we mean by invoice documentation. All of your expenditures must be accompanied by detailed itemized invoices. They should be legible. They should include the name of a seller and a business, address of seller and business, date of purchase, amount paid. Items listed must clearly identify the item purchased and have a proof of payment. To ensure all purchases are made in compliance with grant terms, all expenditures must be accompanied by proof of purchase documentation. Proof of purchase can be everything from credit card receipts to cleared checks or a signed waiver for cash payments. When we talk about equipment will also have tracking and approval requirements. And there is some information posted on our website about what equipment tracking looks like. And then just in general, based on getting a grant award and our estimated time frame, we have performance reports. This is kind of a progress check-in between you and your grant specialist to see how you're progressing with your project. Over the term, there could be up to 8 progress check-ins. Key reminders, your key takeaways. Read through the entire RFGA and other published grant documents. Keep all organized records. Document everything. Submit your reports on time and keep track of deadlines. And then contact us with any questions that you have. So I know that my team has been answering questions along the way in the chat. Bray or Emily, are there specific costs or questions that you would like me to address out loud? All right. Would you repeat the comment about growing the grapes versus making the wine? For example, a forklift involved in grape harvest, yet also involved in processing the harvest headed for wine making. Would this be eligible? So all expenses included in your application must show justification for how it impacts the agricultural production side. Agricultural production is the initial growing or raising of a crop or livestock. I've lost my words, I'm sorry. So again, it's your documentation of how you've included it in your application for the board to consider. Is the grant priority given to low income producers? No, all of the evaluation requirements are outlined in the RFGA, and it's going to be based on production. I don't have it actually in front of me, but check out that section. Is the operation budget based on current expenses and not based on operational budget if the project is implemented? Is the operation budget based on current expenses and not based on operation? I think there's specific instructions on that page of what the board is wanting. So just read over that section and put forward your best information that you have. Can the match amount be through outside loan funds, or is it required to be cash funds from the applicant? Match can be received through loan funds. You will be required to provide a letter from your lender indicating that you can utilize your loan towards match purpose. Can grant funds be used to cover salaries for owners who are also employees? Can their time be considered for match? We actually ran this question by the TAFA board last week during our meeting, and personnel expenditures for yourself or spouse are not allowable costs. And no, their time cannot be considered for match. it would have to be the way we have the budget drafted. It would have to be for eligible expenditures. If awarded $150,000 for a barn, I need to get approval first, but can be reimbursed for 90% before the project completion, or should a quote be submitted? So if you're awarded for $150,000, the way we have the contract section written, we would like to work with you to make sure that you have a sound contract in place, and we can reimburse you up to the 90% before project completion. And well, that's asking a couple of things. I'm going to work at getting that answer in the FAQ document, because I'm reading that a couple of different ways. What is the total amount that TDA has to grant? TDA has an appropriation of $100 million. This $100 million is to be spread out across AgPro, AgLink, which is for critical infrastructure, and Ag Defense, which is a research based initiative for pestilence and pest and disease type activities. And then a new program that is still under development. Any other questions, Bray or Emily? All right. So with that, I know that they've done a really great job of answering as many questions as they can in the chat. We will take all of those questions and make sure that they are addressed in our FAQ document. For those that joined late, we do have an FAQ document that we started from the first call towards the beginning of April. It has not been posted on the website yet. I've been waiting for this call to make sure I have one comprehensive document to make sure all questions are addressed. Thank you guys so much for taking time to join us this afternoon. If there are any other questions, feel free to reach out to us via email, and we will go from there. Thank you. Have a great day.